Welcome back. Okay, so in this video I'm going to go through how I have copied and pasted drum beats and sections to make a separate song for Suspicious Minds by Elvis Presley. So you're looking at the song sheet that I've got for it in the key and the tempo. And all I've done is I printed it out because I like to write things down so I can logically lay out exactly what I need to do within the program. So what I've done is I've gone through the song several times, played it through, and I've broken it down into, as you can see, 6 sections. Well, 7 if you can include an outro. So 6 sections. So I've got intro, which is just a quick GC, GC on 2 bars. So I actually play the intro drums and then I come in as soon as the intro drums are finished. And then I start playing the song. So I use part 1 of the drum pattern with a fill. And I purposely, I mean, you could use any fills you want really, but I've gone through the fills and had a look at them, and I'll show you that in the Beat Buddy Manager online in a second. So there's one fill in this section, and then the transition into part 2 will be done on that B minor D7 last bar section. So as soon as I go into playing that, then I would transition it to part 2. Part 2's obviously got a slightly different beat to it, and there's no fills. So I don't need any fills, so I've deleted the fills from part 2 because I don't need them. But so what I've done then is I've gone part 1 with a single fill. Part 3 is going to be the same as part 1. It's the same chords in the same order, just different lyrics. So it makes sense to just copy it across. So what I'm going to do is copy part 1 and then make that part 3. But all I'm going to do is just change the fill. So I'm going to use a different fill. So on the first part 1, I'm going to use the oldies fill 7, which is the first fill in that part of the song. It'll make sense in a minute when I show you in the manager. And when I copy that to part 3, I'm going to delete the other fills and just keep fill 18. I think it looks like fill 18, fill 8, but it's fill 18 as a fill, just so it's a slightly, again, different, slightly variation. So that's the first section. Part 2, if you look at it, no fills, is the same as part 4. And it's exactly the same words. We can't go on together. So I'm going to delete the fills from part 2. I'm going to copy part 2 and make it part 4. Obviously makes sense. I'm going to leave the transitions alone because the transitions work. And I'm not going to play with them, although you could change them if you wanted to, but I'm not going to. And so I'm going to copy part 2, make that as part 4, no fills. And again, the transition will be on that last bar, D to D7. I just put my foot on when I start playing that last bar on D, take it off sort of halfway through D7, and it will go into part 5. So this is where the song's slightly different. Part 5 is a 6/8 section in a different tempo. And I'm not necessarily saying that the tempos that I've got for this song are accurate to the true version. So it's just what I've found and adapted, and it works for me. So, but I've marked it down as a 6/8, 142 BPM because it's a song version that I had seen of it, and I think it works quite well. Unfortunately, in the Beat Buddy, you can't change a song from 4/4 to 6/8. So my workaround for this was actually to copy a drum section. So in this instant, I'm going to copy part 1 again and make it part 5. But then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make it completely silent. So it'll still run and it'll still be going on a 4-timer beat on the Beat Buddy, but there'll be no output of drums at all. And the reason I've done that is because I've got these single strum sections. So it's a strum, oh, let our love survive, and then just going through the chords on a single. And then we will transition then on that last G, into part 6, which part 6 is going to be a copy of part 2 and 4. And then on part 2 then I'm going to copy to part 4, which I'm then going to copy to part 6. So then this will run through. But on this one, there's more fills. So I'm going to use the 3 fills from part 2, because there are 3 fills in it, and just because it cycles through from the first fill to the second fill to the third fill. So it's got 3 different fills. So actually the fills through the song are all completely different. all the way through. And it just adds a little bit of variation and like I say, extra dynamics. And then the outro. So basically, I normally kind of ad lib the outro. I've got the pedal set as I'm just using the Beat Buddy pedal on its own. I'm not using a foot switch at this moment in time, but I probably will do, and I probably will have the Beat Buddy sort of in front of me, desk height. But I haven't yet, so I'm still working through that. I know how to do it, but I'm trying to keep it simple. I'm trying to just use the Beat Buddy as it is, without any foot pedals, without any switches or anything else plugged into it. And I probably will find the limitations with that and have to use a pedal. I've got an FS6 pedal, which is battery operated, which is fine. And I have plugged it in and set it up and used it, and it works fine. It's not an issue. However, I think I'm just trying to work it and keep it as simple as possible by just using the pedal. So for the outro, you have to double tap the pedal as in the standard settings. So at some point you have to kind of time it in. Now I could take the outro out and just stop it. So I double tap and it would just stop. That's one way of getting around it. The other option is just to sort of time it. So you either add in a couple of chords and just do an extra sort of bar on the end once you double tapped it. It depends. It depends on what works for you. Right, so that's a run through of the song on paper that I've mapped out. So let me get rid of this and bring up Beat Buddy Manager Online and open project as we did before. So like I said, everything is in backup. That's the section I work on, and then I'll plug my Beat Buddy in and sync to SD card to copy it across. Right, so we have Suspicious Minds copy. So we can play this song by, this is a virtual player up here. And if I tap on it, it's going to play the intro to this song, or whatever you've got selected on the left-hand side here. It will start off and play the intro, then it'll play the transitions as you click it once the part one's playing. Sorry, it'll play the intro, and then it'll go into part one. Then if I tap the foot switch once, so I press it once to start it, but just by pressing on the foot pedal, as if I was using the Beat Buddy, but on the screen. If I press it once, it's going to play the intro, then it's going to go into part one. If I press it once again, it's going to start cycling through these drum fills. So if I press it once it's in part one, it will go to the part one fill, then it'll go to the part two fill, the part three fill. When I go to the transition, this is the transition file that's selected. So if I want to listen to the transition file, I can listen to it that way, or I can actually listen to it on the pedal. And I'll show you that now. So click it once, it's going to play the intro and then go into part one. So there we go. So this is as if you were performing the song. So if I wanted to play a fill now and play this fill 7 snare, I'll click it once. There you go, there's the first fill. If I want to play the second fill, which is this one, fill 11, there you go. If I want to now transition, it's going to play this transition to go into, and it'll start playing part two. Press and hold the pedal down. There you go, part two. Now if I want to play the first fill 22, full kit, press it once. If I want to transition, what will happen? It'll transition back to part one. Press and hold. Want to press the outro, double tap. So I can listen to it now, and if I make any adjustments on here, if I delete the fills or change transitions or anything like that there, I can play it as a virtual playthrough. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to copy part one, because I said part one is going to be part three and part five. So we'll just break it down. So we'll do part one. We've got part one, we've got part two. That's the first two sections of the song sorted. Happy with that. Let's copy part one to make it part three. So click over here and it says duplicate. So let's duplicate it. There we go. And I purposely left it as part one, renamed it as part one, because now you'll see what's happening. So it's put a duplicate copy of part one as part one. So it's exactly the same. It's copied all the transition, it's copied all the fills and the accents. And it's moved now part two to part three. So all we've got to do now is click on part one and drag it below and let go. So now you'll see we have part 1, as we did before. Sorry, let me just drag this up the way. A bit more space. Right, so we still got our intro. We now have part 1, we now have part 2, and we now have part 3. So part 3 is now a copy of part 1, which is exactly what I wanted. But what I wanted to do was change the fills. Now, one thing you'll notice, if I click on this now, because I've copied it, so if I click on part 2, obviously it's just highlighting the main beat in part 2. If I click on part 1 main beat, it's actually highlighting part 1 and part 3. If I click on the transition, it's doing the same thing. It's highlighting because these are linked. So to make things a little bit easier, and I haven't quite got my head around this yet, but if you click on part 3 on that section there, come down onto the lower section of the BBMO, there is a little circle and a cross through it, and it says unlink. So I'm going to click that and unlink it, and I'm going to do the same on all these transitions. So click it, unlink, click it, unlink, click it, unlink, and the same with the transition, click it and unlink. So what happens now is if I select part 1 and click through, it's not highlighting anything else other than in the line of part 1, and the same with part 3. And it just keeps it so that if I do any edit onto this transition, it's not going to cross over and either corrupt or affect the other section of part 1. Because in effect, part 3 is now a complete copy of part 1. But it's not attached in any shape or form, so I can manipulate it and do what I want. So if I go to, let me just think, right, get my head rest. Right, so part 1. So I said I wanted only one fill, and that was fill 7, which is this fill here. So let's just play this fill. Okay, cool, that works. I don't want oldies fill 11 snare, so I'm going to delete it. I also don't want oldies fill 18, so I'm going to delete it and save project. As simple as that. So I now have one part with one fill. I can prove that because if I play the intro, it's going to go to part 1. Click on it again, it's only going to play one fill, and it says fill 1 of 1. If I click it again, it's going to play the same fill because there is only one fill. Outro on that, and then transition will be exactly the same. It'll play the transition into part 2. So we now have part 1 is complete and finished. I'm happy, sorted. I've got one fill, which is fill 7, which is what I wanted. I can rename that if I want to, but I don't see any point to. Part 2, I didn't want any fills in part 2, but I'm going to leave them in for the minute because I want to copy part 2 as part 4, and it'll copy the fills across, and then I can get rid of the fills. So I'm going to leave that for a second. We now have a part 3, and in part 3, going back to my sheet at the beginning, I only wanted, did I get rid of that? I did, didn't I? Idiot. Right, I'll just bring that back up again in a second. Hang on, example. There we go. Let me get rid of that. So on the song for part 3, I wanted oldies fill 18. Okay, so let's bring this back up. And part 3, oldies fill 18. So I didn't want 7. I don't want 11. I just want 18. So click on that one, delete. Click on 11, delete. Let's bring that up and close it again. There's a quirk with this program that it doesn't bring up and show these beats. It minimizes the screen for some reason. I don't know why. I will work it out though. So now we have part 3 with the fill that I wanted, which was part 18. I can play that. Cool. So now, save project. So I've saved that section. If I want to undo it, I can do, just by going undo, and it'll bring them all back in. I can then go forward again. The thing it won't do is if you come out of BBMO and come back into it and then think, oh, I'll undo what I did last time. After having saved the project, you can't. So you need to make sure that any edits or anything you're going to do, you do it while it's open and live. Because once you come off the program, if you then reopen it and try and undo an edit from previous, you won't be able to do it. So that's one tip. Okay, so we now have intro, part 1 with 1 fill. Part 2, still got the 3 fills at the moment. I don't want any fills in part 2. I'll sort that in a minute. Part 3 is now a copy of part 1, as it shows on here, but it's got a different fill, which is exactly what I'm after. So let's move on to part 4 of the song. So part 4 of the song, I wanted a copy of part 2. So again, over here onto the 3 dots, duplicate. You'll see what it does. It adds part 2 below part 2 as a copy and pushes our order the wrong way round now. So now I want this to be part 4. So I just drop it down below. There we go. So we now have part 1 with the 1 fill, part 2, part 3 with a different fill, and now we have part 4, which is a copy of part 2, which is exactly what I was after, but I don't want any fills. So I wanted a copy of, right, so I'm gonna delete the fills on this part 2 now because I can. I don't want any fills on part 2. Don't need them. Part 2, delete the fills. Boom, save project. Okay. So we now have the song intro, part 1 with 1 fill, 7, which is what I was after. Part 2 with no fills. And part 3, which is a copy of part 1 but with a different fill. Bargain, sorted. And now we have part 4, which is a copy of part 2. Again, notice when I click on this one, it links it. So let's go down here and unlink it. I think they're all unlinked anyway because I've deleted them, haven't I? Yeah, I should have unlinked it before I deleted it, but it doesn't seem to have made any difference. Okay, cool. Save project. Again, it highlights it, sort of gives you a bit of a clue. So I'm now happy, apart from the fact that I will need to delete the fills from part 4 of the song, but I'm not going to do that because I want to keep that and copy that to part 6, and I want to use those 3 fills. So I will come back to this and sort this out in a minute. So part 5, which is going to be the silent part of the song. So I want a copy of part 1. So I'm going to click on this one. Right, click on the little 3 dots, duplicate. It puts it below. So I want that now to be part 6. Part 5. Click on it again, unlink it. Click on this fill. Notice it highlights the fill in the other one as well. So let's unlink that and probably the transition. Yeah, let's unlink that. In fact, did I unlink that transition? I didn't. Let's do that one as well. Right, there we go. So hopefully now when I click on everything, it should come up as separate. It does. Right, okay. So part 5. Right, I don't want any fills in part 5. So let's delete that fill. Delete it down there. Let's save project. So I said part 5 of the song. So if I play it, it's making noise. I don't want it to make noise. I want it to do nothing. So we're going to drop into this bottom editor. I'm going to click on the very far right to make it large. And here we have the 2 bars of this song, and all of these orange dots are drums. Noises. I don't want noises. Now I'm pretty sure I could probably delete them all. So if you want to work on a selection of these, you can just click on the individual ones like this and manipulate or do what you want, drag it, copy it, etc. Get rid of it. Or if you click just above the box and then hold your finger on the mouse and drag it, you can have a selection, if you like, and you can just delete them just by hitting backspace or delete. So let's delete them all. Okay. Now if I hit play, guess what? I get nothing but silence. Boom. So let's close that. Let's save the project. So I've now got my silent section, which is exactly what I was after. So if I play this song now, and I'll just quickly run through there's the intro. I'll just do a straight transition. Well, here's the part 1, fill, which is oldies fill 7. hold it down, and we'll transition into part 2. Okay, if I click the fill, there's nothing there. So we'll transition into part 3. Part 3. Transition. The fill, which is different to the original fill, which is good. We'll hold it down and transition into part 4, sorry. So part 4, again, I don't want any fills on this, but I'll sort that in a second. Now let's transition into part 5 and you'll see what happens. There's nothing happening, but the Beat Buddy is still running. And as I say, if I go back to my song now, so what I've got now is the Beat Buddy's still running in the background. It's still going away on its tempo of 115 BPM, but it's completely silent. So I can crack on and do this, oh, let our love survive, I'll dry the tears from my eyes, at my own free will, which is my workaround for this song. So we're going to bring it back in with part 6. So, I haven't got part 6, so what will happen at the moment is when I transition, but you'll hear the transition, and I think the transition sounds really good. So what will happen at the moment, it'll transition to part 1. So let's just do this transition. There you go. And then I'll stop it. So, we've now got the 5 parts of the song which I was after, including the silent bit, which is fantastic. So, and part 6, I said I wanted to be a copy of part 2. And just go back to the song, and yeah, so I was going to copy part 6, so I can copy part 4 now, which has still got the fills on it, as part 6. Once I've done that, I can delete the fills from part 4 because I don't need them. And all it's doing is taking up space. I mean, I could leave them in, but I don't see much point. I'm not going to use them. But I could leave them in if I wanted to use them. Then, you know, when I'm halfway through this, I could put a fill in on, you know, on the C before mines, or if I wanted to. But I don't see any point because I'm not going to. So why use up extra space and leave it there if I'm not going to use it? Might change my mind in the future and go back to it. I might do all sorts of things. I don't know yet. So we're going to copy part 4 as part 6, and then leave the fills in. So let's do that now. And clean it up, and then we've got our 6 parts of our song. Right, so let's go to this section, part 4, on here, with our fills. Right-click on the 3 dots on the right, and duplicate. And there we go. Now, part 5, we are going to drag down underneath and make it part 6. And there it is. So straight away, I can now click on this, delink, click on all of these, on the new section we've just put in, the part 6 section, which is a copy of part 2 from all the way back. Just delink it all, just to make sure. Save project. What I could do now is go back to part 4, and I just said I don't want any fills, so let's delete these. Part 4 fill, that one, delete, and that one there, delete. We now have, let's save project. So I now have my 6 parts of the song, which is exactly what I was after. And part 6 is the, in effect, is the same chords as part 1 and part 3 in the song version that I've got, and I've got my 3 fills, which is exactly what I was after. 2, 3 fills, and then the outro. So this, in effect, now, if I go back to my song, maximize it, I have exactly what I was after. Part 1 with an oldies fill 7, transitions to part 2 with no fills, transitions to part 3, which is a copy of part 1 with a different fill, part 4, which is a copy of part 2 exactly with no fills, part 5, which is now the silent section, part 6, which is a copy of part 4, which is a copy of part 2, but with the 3 fills in. So I've got different fills that I can use, and then the outro. So that's exactly what I was after throughout this song, and that's exactly what I've got in here. So let's just quickly play it through. I don't need to save it or anything. Let's see what it sounds like by using the virtual player, and then I can just, right, there's the intro, recording a trap, I can't walk out, and then I've got a fill, there's the fill. can't you see what you're doing to me? And you don't believe a word I say. So let's go to transition. We can't go on together with suspicious minds, and we can't build our dreams. Suspicious minds. No friend I know. That's the second. This is part 3 now, as it says on the screen here. Transitions. So then we're going to go back into 4, which is again, we can't go on together. So it's transition to 4. There we go. Go on together with suspicious minds. We can't build our dreams. And so this is now going to go into part 5, which is the silent section. So let me I'll just badly sing it through. We're at part 4 of the song, right? So, and we can go. Sorry, get it right a second. We can build our dreams on suspicious minds. Oh, let our love survive. I'll dry the tears from your eyes. It works perfectly for me, and I'm quite happy with it because I can ad-lib it and I can slow it down. Don't let a good thing die. When, honey, you know I've never lied to you. And then when I get to the section where I go, yeah. So the only thing you've got to watch out for is when you bring it back in, is you might have to kind of adjust yourself to get back into the tempo, because obviously you're ad-libbing. So you've got to keep an eye on this bar's doing on this beat. And it's not too bad to do, to be honest. I mean, I come back in on I've never lied to you, yeah, which is a G chord for me. So what you could do is just extend that G chord to play an extra bar or half a bar if needed. But just with a bit of practice, it's fine and it works all right. So I'll just take you through what I'm on about if it kind of makes sense. So I'll just do the last kind of couple of little bits where it goes, lied to you, yeah. We're caught in a trap. See what I mean? I can't walk out. So this is now part 6. But it works fine. It just takes a little bit of thing. So part 6 now, and I've got the 3 fills if I want them. So if I click on the first one, it's going to play the first fill. Click on it again, it'll play the second fill when I want it to. Click on it again, it'll play the third fill. And then when I get to the end, because I love you too much, baby. And then you've got the outro fill. So that is my run through of Suspicious Minds, and how all I've done is copied and pasted from the oldies. Oldies. That's me, that is. All I've done is copied oldie 1 and 4, clicked on here, made a duplicate copy of it, then I've moved it into where I wanted it to be, renamed it by just clicking on it and calling it whatever I wanted. And then all I've done is I've copied the parts and played around with the drum fills, deleted a few, added a bit, and then made part 5 as a silent partner. So it still plays. If I play it, you get no sound or anything. And it works. I hope that's been helpful. Any questions, just let me know. And so moving on, we'll probably I'll look at some more songs and some more manipulations and any other tips and stuff that I pick up along the way. Thanks for watching. If you like it, subscribe so you get notified when the next video comes up. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why. Thanks very much.